Well, hey everybody, John Ricklin here, and this is every NXT TakeOver tag title match ranked from worst to best. And this does include TakeOver Blackpool because I had a pretty damn good tag title match. And I'm also going to be doing one for every NXT TakeOver World title match ranked from worst to best because I'm going to include the UK title and I'm going to give a shout out to a whole bunch of stuff that people may have forgotten about and some matches that haven't aged totally well. But anyway, with 23 tag title matches to cover, because there were a couple takeovers that didn't actually have a tag title match. I believe TakeOver Respect was one of them. I figured I'd take a look, and just see, hey, how the tag title, how the tag title division has evolved, the tag team division, if you will, because there was some shit. The earlier takeovers had some really good shit, but then had some stuff, the tag titles didn't really gain a lot of prestige until about a year into the TakeOver events. That's my personal opinion. But anyway, let's get on with this. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys. And here we go. So we get number 23, the Ascension versus Too Cool at Arrival. Yes, I'm including Arrival because it's a TakeOver event, even though they didn't count as a TakeOver event. That's why I'm counting it. It wasn't very good. The Ascension were the tag team champions. Too Cool showed up. It was okay. Ascension won easily. Very easily. It was there to pop the crowd. It was okay, but it was a squash. And the Ascension really were only good in squash matches because Victor and Connor aren't bad workers. They just aren't necessarily great. They were booked better in NXT than they were on the main roster because, good God, they're just outside, out like on the perimeter. They're just like, comedy fodder at this point. Number 22, Blake and Murphy versus Enzo and Cass at TakeOver Unstoppable. It has Enzo and Cass in it when they were still pretty over, but just something about this didn't gel. Blake and Murphy shockingly winning the tag titles from the Lucha Dragons was a bit stunning. It was good. I'm not complaining about it, but it was a little bit odd. Now, they actually are a pretty underappreciated tag team. I thought Blake and Murphy were really phenomenal in parts as, tag team champions. So they're probably the first, I guess, good tag team champions that I saw, at least as far as the network era and everything. It was okay. Enzo and Cass are much more just personality than anything. They worked better together than they did apart, but something about this just didn't really pop to me. Number 21, Ascension versus El Local, which was Ricardo Rodriguez, wrestling. He didn't do bad. And Kalisto, this was from TakeOver, the first ever TakeOver in May of 2014, that had Charlotte versus Natalya to crown a new women's champion. And I did I'll have a playlist at the end of the video. I did rank every single NXT TakeOver women's match from worst to best back shortly after TakeOver Phoenix. So really the only one I didn't include was the recent 4-way because I didn't know how it was going to be because it didn't happen yet. And excuse me for not possessing the kind of clairvoyant-sized brain to know what matches are going to happen, how good they're going to be. This was okay. Nothing great. I ranked it a little bit higher because Ricardo actually wasn't bad in the ring. Kalisto could work pretty well. And, they got an okay match out of the Ascension, but it was what it was. Number 20, Blake and Murphy versus the Lucha Dragons, Fatal 4-way. Yep. This was where Blake and Murphy, did some really good things while Kalisto did some good Lucha things. God damn it, woo. I'm never going to let that go. Granted, Kalisto made fun of it himself, but I think he might have gotten upset at some of the stuff I said, even though I never tagged him because the guy blocked me a while ago. But it was a good match. Fatal 4-way, actually. Some of those earlier NXT TakeOver events had really good moments, but some squash matches and stuff like that. This was a pretty good tag match. Pretty good tag title match. There were other good tag team matches that could be found that weren't always for the tag titles, but I'm not going to rank every single tag team match. Because quite frankly, I don't have that long. I do not have that much time. And then what do you quantify that as? Do you quantify it as 2-on-2, 3-on-3? Do you put the War Games matches in there? And eventually I may actually rank every single War Games match from worst to best. Would only be able to include really the pay-per-view ones, though, as the War Games set, unless they put them all on the network. I won't be able to do that, but that's a whole nother story for another day. Number 19, Blake and Murphy versus Lucha Dragons at Rival. This was good. This was good stuff. This was near the end of 2014, where Blake and Murphy finally got the victory. And look, Blake and Murphy, I know they get a bad rap. And I said before, I thought they were pretty good, even phenomenal as a team. They worked better together than, Blake. Blake has just been left in the goddamn dust, because he's part of the Forgotten Sons. The Who? Yes, the Forgotten Son. Rival was where the TakeOver event started to take a little more shape. Things were getting a little bit better. This was a little crisper. And this was better than the previous match. Not by much, as there was only one spot separating them, but still, this was pretty cool, and Blake and Murphy started their run, doing really good stuff, and actually culminating at, TakeOver Brooklyn 1, that I'll get to here in a bit. But we then get the Vaudevillains versus Lucha Dragons at Our Evolution. Yeah, Our Evolution, no. It was okay. The Vaudevillains, this was the last match that the Lucha Dragons successfully defended the tag titles in. The Vaudevillains would eventually capture the titles and then lose them to Dash and Dawson. Before they were the Revival, they were just Dash and Dawson. But a good match. But a good match overall, but sort of just okay when you look back on it. I don't know. It's like a lot of these earlier ones. Something about it just didn't pop. However, it was nice to see the Vaudevillains actually used as a tag team. Lucha Dragons are still pretty over here, so it was what it was. And then we get Dash and Dawson versus Enzo and Cass in London. If it hadn't been for the goddamn London crowd, this match probably would have been not that good, because Enzo couldn't wrestle worth a lick, still can't. And Cass, for all that he was just a big guy that could hit a pretty big boot. It's really about all he could do. However, the crowd did add a lot of energy to it, and these teams did go all out. Now, Dash and Dawson winning here and stopping Enzo and Cass from ever capturing the tag titles, probably the right call, because in retrospect, them winning the tag titles probably wouldn't have done anything for them. They were so over they didn't need to. Now in the main roster, they kind of needed to, but they didn't need to win them in NXT, because NXT isn't always the measuring stick for success on the main roster compared to, despite what some people want to say. It was a good match, helped by a hot crowd, so it was what it was. We then get to number 16, the Vaudevillains versus Blake and Murphy, easy for me to say, from Brooklyn 1. You had Blue Pants out there, Leva Bates. I don't know how to say her name. The crowd's chanting Blue Pants City. Alexa was in full heel mode, and good God, that was great. And this is where Blake and Murphy lost the titles. Oh, if you look actually at the match was decent. It wasn't anything blow away, but the hot goddamn crowd, the big old arena, really did help. The whirling dervish, the uppercut, that I believe it was Gotcha did the uppercut, and then Aiden English hit, the snapping neck breaker, swinging neck breaker, and then got that. It's called the whirling dervish. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the Vaudevillains only held the titles for like 3 months, but still, hot crowd, good result. Not great, but still, it did help with the atmosphere. The atmosphere did add a whole lot to this. Number 15, AOP versus DIY from San Antonio. Look, I know that some people may think I ranked this a little bit low. You might be able to understand why. DIY had just won the tag titles. Sure, you could argue that once they won the tag titles, that was about it. They had to burst the bubble quick, or the bubble had already burst because people had seen them win. And AOP were being built as these big, unstoppable monsters and everything, but I'm sorry, this just didn't work for me. The crowd didn't like it. San Antonio, to me, is one of the weaker takeovers, even though it wasn't bad. It just was one of the weaker takeovers, because it was right before, the day before the Royal Rumble in 2017 that was taking place at the Alamo Dome, I believe, which they got a pretty good crowd in there. But with this, something just didn't quite work, because AOP were still very green, and they've gotten better in the ring, I guess. They're two big lads that are in their early to almost mid-20s that really were just put there, with on-the-job training and being given on-the-job training. But this, it was fine. I didn't like that AOP won so quickly. I get it, because it did eventually build to the whole thing where, Ciampa turned on Gargano, a number of months later. I think you could have saved this for Orlando, and you just could have done a fluky finish or something like that, had the Revival interfere. I mean, you can tell I'm talking about the Revival quite a bit here. It's the only Revival shirt I own. I probably should see if they have any others. But, because I really like the Revival despite all the bad booking they've gotten on the main roster. Good God, have they ever. This was good. But yeah, I just didn't agree with the result. Even though I understood, I didn't agree with it. Number 14, Undisputed Era versus AOP in Philly. And this was taking place a year later. And, right before the Rumble. AOP losing isn't what bothered me, because the Undisputed Era being tag team champions, okay, cool. AOP were just kind of made to look like idiots because of how they lost. And go back and watch the match, you'll understand what I'm saying. It just, I don't know. This didn't quite work. It worked a bit better, than AOP and DIY, but yeah, I just didn't like this. I just didn't like this one very much. I understood it, and I certainly wasn't saying the Undisputed Era should have had the tag titles taken off of them that quick. I don't know. They kind of wrote themselves into a corner and had to figure it out. I bet AOP was going to go to the main roster in a couple months, so I get that. Then we get to, well, another AOP match. A lot of AOP matches kind of in this weird glut, like, of right almost in the middle where they're good enough workers with the right teams. Like here, AOP versus Undisputed Era, which was, of course, O'Reilly and Fish, because you did not have Adam Cole. Well, actually, you did have Adam Cole in there, but Adam Cole had already been beat up because Fish, I believe, was still injured at this point. So he had Cole, but Cole had already been working twice because he won the North American Championship earlier in the night. And it was good. Poor Bobby Fish having to miss most of the best run of the Undisputed Era because I believe of torn ligaments in his knee. But anyway, so it was Cole and O'Reilly, but it was Roderick Strong and Pete Dunne who had won the Dusty Classic, or it was for the Dusty Classic trophy / NXT tag titles. And what was great about this, the reason this is ranked as high as it is, it was a good match. It was quick. I think it was like a 12-minute match. It was there because Pete Dunne looked like he about had the victory. And then Roderick Strong just kicked the shit out of Pete Dunne, causing Dunne to not get the victory. And it showed that Roderick Strong was joining the Undisputed Era, and then 1, 2, 3. So the Undisputed Era gets the victory. So they win the tag titles, or keep the tag titles and win the Dusty Classic trophy, despite not being in the goddamn Dusty Classic tournament, but whatever. It is what it is. Good old Dusty finish. I was happy with it because I was like, oh god, and I wish I would have called that happening. It was good stuff though, and honestly, New Orleans probably was one of the best takeovers. I don't know if it was the best takeover ever, but it's top 3, top 5 easily. Just because of the flow and the goddamn energy, and it did beat Mania as far as actually delivering. But then we get to number 12. It's AOP versus DIY versus the Revival from Orlando the year before, where the night before it was Mania in Orlando. It was a good match. It was a better triple threat than I expected it to be. It was a triple threat elimination match. Of course, Revival would be called soon after this. AOP would end up retaining because they just had the titles for a few months. But it was almost disappointing because then you would go to another AOP DIY match while the Revival got called up. And then one guy's jaw, I think it was it Dash who got his jaw broken and then Dawson tore his bicep or something like that. It was weird. It was just weird. It was just unfortunate, the bad timing of the injuries. However, good flow to the match. Probably the best match on the goddamn show, actually, in my personal opinion. Well, this and Asuka versus Ember Moon 1 might have actually been co-matches of the night. But then we get, number 11, Sandy versus AOP at Brooklyn 3. Better than I expected, honestly. I did not really think this was going to be very good. And Sandy would not have the tag titles very long. They would win them here. And this is where it would be that weird period of after AOP had been champions for a number of months since January of that year. And then suddenly they're in this weird glut where it's like they're in good matches still, the first WWE era of War Games. And then, the previous match that I mentioned about the Undisputed Era. But it just seemed like they were, after they lost the titles, they were just lost. And Sandy, again, did not have them very goddamn long. I mean, they had him, if I'm right, they had him through War Games because the titles were on the line there. And then Undisputed Era, got him soon after. It was a good match, and you did have, Nikki being just freaking, destroyed in the splash. It was good stuff. Everybody got involved. It was a big old schmoz. Nuts and everything, but still very, very fun. Number 10, War Raiders versus Undisputed Era, Takeover Phoenix. I remember being very down on this match when myself and the Durbinator did a review on it. Or at least maybe I'm just remembering differently, but I remember being a little bit down on this match. And it was a good match. It wasn't a great match by any stretch, but I'm putting it here because I actually thought they were going to find a way to have the Undisputed Era get the, somehow eke out the win just by getting counted out or DQ'd or something like that. I think even though I predicted the War Raiders, I was like, okay, it's like they're going to find a way to screw it over, but have the War Raiders eventually win. Well, they didn't do that. they had the War Raiders. Not smash them. It was good stuff. It was a well-wrestled match. I certainly enjoyed it, but I do remember being a little bit harsh on it. Maybe that was a bit unfair. We then get number 9, Mustache Mountain versus James Drake and Zach Gibson at Takeover Blackpool. Terrific. Maybe went on a little bit long, just a little bit. But to crown the first ever NXT UK era tag team champions, I was all convinced it was going to be Mustache Mountain. All convinced. It was Drake and Gibson, and I give them credit for pulling that off. I was a bit shocked. The crowd was upset, but you know what? You want to get Gibson and Drake over. Looking back on, it's pretty damn good stuff. It is hard to believe. Takeover Blackpool feels like it was about 8 months ago. And it was only 3 months ago. Sometimes there's good talent in the UK brand. Just for a little brief rant here, there's good talent in the UK brand. But something about the weekly show just doesn't pop to me. Some of the stuff is good. I like the women's division, the ones that are lower here on the talent level, they're trying to build up. And then ones that are up here on the talent level, they're trying to help, the women's division trying to help each other out. Just something about it just doesn't quite pop to me. I mean, I can watch it sometimes, but I don't think I've watched a full episode in about a month. Because I don't have time. I pre-record a lot of these, like this kind, videos like this. I will always record on off days. And, either days off or days where it's like I'm home and I got nothing better to do. But I try to record a glut of 2-3 hours of content that I upload throughout the week or throughout 2 weeks. So, a little bit of an insight into how I do things. But anyway, Mustache Mountain versus Drake and Gibson was very, very good. And Drake and Gibson gained the victory. Certainly shocking. Good stuff, though. It was a very, very well-wrestled match. I believe Trent got his head busted open. We then get to number 8. It's AOP versus DIY ladder match. Takeover Chicago. I like this. I like this a lot. Ciampa apparently had his knee injured, and I believe injured it even further doing this. I really hope Ciampa can come back from that neck injury. Let me rephrase. I hope Ciampa can come back to the ring 100% after his neck, heals and everything. If he can't, I just want to have a good quality of life with his wife and child, and hopefully he's kept around to be a trainer, that kind of stuff. But this match, yes, you could tell that Ciampa was fucking limping, but Ciampa's a goddamn gamer. Him and Gargano took a whole lot of goddamn shots. AOP looked like freaking monsters, and still won, retained the tag titles. And then, oh sweet Jesus, that turn at the end where Ciampa freaking throwing Gargano into the LED board. Which is hard, but it's not the apron. Because the apron is the hardest part of the ring. But the LED board on the stage is not part of the ring. Then, Ciampa's just beating up Gargano and everything. Gargano with the best-selling face and the crowd just yelling, just screaming, "Fuck you, Ciampa." And I'm like, okay, I got that right there. But this is a great match, and it kicked off. It made AOP look like monsters. It started the whole Gargano-Ciampa thing that they would continue. Once Ciampa had the reconstructive knee surgery, tore his ACL, and I believe a couple other ligaments. But the ACL is kind of an important ligament. Fortunately, I can't say I've torn that. I've torn a couple of smaller ligaments that hurts like a bitch. I can only imagine how Ciampa felt. But then we get to number 7, the War Raiders versus Ricochet and Alistar Black from Takeover New York. I refer to the review that myself and the Durbinator did very, very recently. Depending on when I post this, there could be a link up there that you guys can check out. Give that review a watch, though, especially after this video. But I really did enjoy this match. It was 100% better than I expected, not because of the talent. But I'm like, okay, they're going to have War Raiders steamroll through Alistar and Ricochet because it's their last night in NXT. They didn't do that. It was ultra competitive, and it looked like Ricochet and Alistar might actually pull off the shocking upset. That didn't happen, and the War Raiders won. They showed respect to Alistar and Ricochet afterwards, and there we go. So it was good stuff. That's really all I'm going to say right there. Now getting back to number 6. American Alpha versus the Revival Takeover. The end. People were like, is this the end of takeovers? No, it was the end of certain rivalries. That's what it was. Like the end of the Balor-Joe rivalry that went on for about 18 years. It actually only went on for about 8 months, but it felt longer. I don't mind long-term storytelling, but I'll cover that in another list. This was terrific. American Alpha had won the titles a couple months prior at TakeOver Dallas. I actually got to see them in a May house show in Seattle. American Alpha and the Revival. the exact, or, I mean, maybe not the exact match, but the exact pace of the match and the impact they did, the impactful moves. Same damn match you would see, on TV that you saw at that house show. They went all fucking out, beating the shit out of each other. Match of the night, easily. It was a very, very fun night. And that was fun to cut a review of. Unfortunately, at the time, I was like still doing videos on Ustream, so it was like videos all glitchy and stuff. But I did enjoy being there for that live experience with at the Paramount Theater. And myself and Derb actually went to another house show the next year. They didn't have a house show this year, or last year in Seattle. I hope that NXT brings that back because I would like to be there again. I would like to be there at a house show. Even if they go through talent fluctuations, it's still a lot of fun to be at a house show. This great match. Revival did get the victory. Again, winning the tag titles back, but American Alpha will be called up soon after. They got their nice feel-good moment earlier, which I will cover in a second. DIY versus the Revival, Takeover Brooklyn 2, Electric Boogaloo. This was really good. This was really good, and you thought DIY was going to get the victory. They almost did. And then the Revival pulled it away from them. Like last man, the crowd was deflated. They were excited because DIY came heart-stoppingly close. So goddamn close. So close, and they just couldn't do it. And God, the crowd was deflated. And it was great stuff. Don't get me wrong. It was great goddamn stuff, but boy... Oh, they had it. They were almost ready to give it to the crowd, and then they took it away from them. Like, no, you got to wait a little bit longer. And don't worry, I'll cover the rematch here in a bit. But this is terrific stuff. Encourage you guys to go watch it. American Alpha versus the Revival, Takeover Dallas. Good God, this is great. American Alpha and Revival kicking off the show proper. You could argue that the match and at the end was maybe a little bit better worked. It went a few minutes longer. I think this one went 15 minutes. I think the one at the end went about 18 or 19. But this was fucking terrific. And American Alpha beating the Revival, which I actually didn't think was going to happen. I thought American Alpha would come close, but they wouldn't do it. But they did. They did the thing. They won, and it was great. And the crowd was kicked off with a great, great match and a great title change. The show was kicked off, and the crowd just kicked it up a notch. And good God, did they kick it up like crazy for Nakamura and Sami Zayn. Then we get a match that I don't think gets enough love. Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch versus the Undisputed Era from Takeover Chicago 2, again, Electric Boogaloo. They really should have, this really should have gotten a lot more love than it did. I love this match. Now, I don't think there was any doubt that Lorcan and Burch were not going to win the tag titles here. But they got me. And the crowd was booing Lorcan and Burch at first. It wasn't that they had anything against them, but Chicago's known for cheering the heels and everything. The Undisputed Era, led by Adam Cole. In the comments, I know that people are going to either type that or you're going to say it right after I said that. But Adam Cole, This is great though, and Lorcan and Burch got the people back into it. They got them on their side enough, but of course, Undisputed Era got the victory. I mean, come on, they were going to hold the titles, but God, it was a terrific effort by Lorcan and Burch. Better than I expected it to be. I thought it would be a good match. I didn't think it was going to be this good, even as talented as these guys are. Number 2. Undisputed Era versus Mustache Mountain, Takeover Brooklyn 4, as Derb would say, everybody get on the floor and do the dinosaur. This was good. Because Undisputed Era had lost the tag titles, on a UK taping, or it was the UK special, I think they did in June 2018. And then they won them back on NXT TV in July, I think like mid-July of, so like a month later. And then this was the rematch, and this was, because automatic rematch clauses actually do happen in NXT, except when the people that lose the championships get called up right afterwards. It's like, well, I guess that's not happening. But this was a terrific, well-wrestled match. Thought Mustache Mountain would actually get him back. They didn't, but the UK brand is starting up soon. Undisputed Era still had plenty of juice left in them as tag team champions. I really enjoyed this. You could argue the one on TakeOver TV might have been just a little bit better. But boy, did they go all out. Beating each other up. Great moves. Everything. But it's not number 1. You know why it's not number 1? Because it's DIY versus the Revival. 2 out of 3 falls at TakeOver Chicago. Or TakeOver Toronto, rather. TakeOver Chicago would have probably actually given them just as big of a reaction. But TakeOver Toronto, they need to go back into Canada for a TakeOver. They do. They have to at some point. I love the Toronto crowd. They were hot for the entire goddamn thing, at least as far as I remember. Or at least they were hot for Ty versus Rude, and they were hot for this, and they were hot for so much stuff. This is the best tag team match that I have seen in WWE. WWE, NXT, whatever. in the past 10 years, you can fucking fight me over that. I'm not going to say that you guys are wrong if you want to have a different opinion. The best tag team match. This is something they could have put in the NWA. This is something they could have put in the AWA. This is something they could have put anywhere. They could have put this in Texas. They could have put this in any goddamn promotion in the territories. Goddamn terrific. Revival suddenly getting the first fall. DIY coming back finally after a grueling session, getting the second fall. And then that double submission and everything. And just the crowd's like ready. They don't think it's going to happen because I think it was like Gargano got dash in the Gargano escape. And then it looked like Dawson was going to, interfere. But then Ciampa did like the arm thing, like, where he bends the arm back and stuff like that after he gets him on the ground. And it just looks like, it's like maybe they're getting, and they can't get away and everything. They finally tap out in the crowd. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about the crowd absolutely exploding. It's like that one should have been the main event probably because the crowd was pretty exhausted afterwards. But this was really goddamn good. Perfect tag team match. I really can't find any flaws with it. I just can't. Maybe I'm looking through rose-tinted glasses. It's been about, granted, only 2.5 years. But still, my favorite tag team match, my favorite tag team title match at TakeOver, my favorite tag team match in the last 10 years. Probably the last 15. Hard to tell. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. Agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. Well, I'm John Ritlin. I will see you soon.